Now the fun begins. Budget.
Stop! You violated the law.
What's good, and welcome to part 2 of the first episode of the bonus accessory Game Pass Gamecast. I'm your host, Travis White, and in part 2 of our deep dive look at Halo the Master Chief Collection, my co-hosts Mike Peapack, Adam Marsh, and I will take a look at the uniqueness of the Halo franchise's narrative, the ambiance around it. And why we have a lot to be excited about moving into Halo Infinite in that regard. It's a conversation that really, pulls on my heartstrings as a longtime fan. So I'm just really excited for everyone to hear this, and hopefully will lead to starting a dialogue with you, the viewer, on why you love this series just like we do. Or, hate it. That's cool too, even though you're probably a psychopath for doing that. Wait, what? No, never mind. Anyways, before we jump in, I do want to let you know that you can now catch the Game Pass Gamecast on Spotify. Yes, we finally got approved to join Spotify, with all episodes moving forward being added to the streaming service, including new episodes every Friday. Apple Podcasts will hopefully be included in this preamble next week, fingers crossed, but we are still in the review process on that end. But enough about that. Let's jump back into talking about that sweet, nasty Halo. Take it away, Past Travis. Segue with Journey, and I think maybe Adam and I will be able to touch on this a little more, and Mike will as well. But I think us being, our gaming interest, I think we love story. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. You love, no matter what a game does, if it touches you in a way that, not Stranger Danger touches you, you know what I mean.
I got you.
But in a way that you look at it and you're like, holy shit, that was like, this is almost cinematic, or this is almost, this is a good narrative.
Let me kick this off by asking you: have you seen the terminal cutscenes that were added into Halo Anniversary in MCC? They added new.
I don't actually think I have.
Okay, so they added terminals in Halo 1 in MCC.
Right, I do know that. Yeah,
and a bunch more scenes were made. I think they were sent out to another studio who actually animated them, but I think 343 was directing.
Okay.
One of the best ones in there is kind of this first-person account of how Keyes is infested by the Flood over the course of Halo 1. And,
okay, whenever he's, engulfed into... Yeah.
And it's his experience.
Spoiler alert.
It's from his perspective
for
of...
a game in 2001.
Being infested and having the Overmind, prodding through his mind, where he really can't do anything about it, but you can tell that he's fighting back and putting up as much resistance as he can to protect the military secrets that he knows.
Right, yeah. And I mean,
it was something that I wasn't prepared for when I watched it. I'm like, I know Halo 1, there's nothing left for me there. But going back and watching that scene, it was the best horror I think I've ever seen in a game that didn't involve
jump scares
or just being atmospheric and creepy.
It was just tense.
It was almost on the level of body horror, of you could really feel that experience of having a presence in your mind that wasn't yours.
And then you can also relate it to how bad it would be for humanity. If the Gravemind found out all these secrets that Keyes had for humanity and what their course of action was.
The big picture consequences, you knew, what... Having played the game, you knew what the outcome of the scene was, but they managed to go back and retouch this aspect of the story, and they really nailed it with the horror. And that's when I remembered, hey, Halo's story is really aging well, and Halo's story has always been pretty good.
Right. What do you now? Let me open this up to you. What do you think overall for? Let's say, I know we're talking MCC, but the majority of MCC is the original trilogy, and I think that's what. And like I said before, Halo 4's campaign, I really loved. And I know a lot of people didn't beat it or don't have as much, affinity to 4 and 5's campaign. And you can talk dirty to me on the internet all you want. I actually didn't mind Halo 5's campaign. It was nowhere near a good Halo campaign, but it was okay. I didn't feel like I wasted 6-8 hours, whatever it was. Or completely wasted, I should say.
It had Nathan Fillion.
It did, and Buck is the fucking man. But, what to you, or what do you think makes the narrative in Halo, and just Halo from a storytelling, from the campaign end of it, the story that's being told you, what makes it so compelling compared to, that's made it stand the test of time and age so well? What do you think makes it stand out?
I feel like one of Halo's story's great strengths is its ability to tell a large-scale story with just a couple of characters.
Yes.
There's huge-scale conflicts, entire species at war in space, and you've got this grand space opera going on, but really, the whole fate of the conflict hinges on just a couple of people, right? And
like Chief, Arby, Cortana,
right?
Yeah, and then the Prophets in Halo 2,
the
Gravemind.
All of these players are just a handful of personalities that you get to know, but
they're like puppeteers, right? They're making everything happen,
right?
But when it all shakes down, like you're saying, it's just those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I agree. And on a broader sense or more generalization, the thing that I think, and I was thinking about this, obviously leading into this podcast and whatnot, but just last summer I replayed through MCCs all the campaigns plus 5 as well, because I then committed to Game Pass as well. So I was like, I have 5 now. You know what? I'm actually going to go back and beat this, because I never beat it. But I think the thing that Halo has done so well and does so well, and it's probably too because it was a time period that they can only do so much. Halo is always emphasized the mystique, and it's always told a story of so much, like you were saying, but in a sense of so little. Like, okay, so stay with me on this one. Halo 1. You're talking what? 2001, this drops.
Yeah,
you're playing
the
released with the Xbox, the original Xbox. You're playing on a very, low-end PC, basically.
It's the first time you can play with your best friend or whoever, your little brother, your big brother,
right.
on the console together, playing through a story.
Right, yes. So, but you're playing on hardware that is lower than a PC at that point.
Yeah.
You're playing on, you can only do so much.
Right.
What Halo did so well was, it always made me feel like I'm seeing such a, and this is with, bigger franchises and whatnot, but Halo was a new franchise. I always saw the seeds of bigger things. But it was always like, I feel like with so much, but they're only showing me so little. Like, they touch on, the Forerunners, and they touched on these things, and they touch on all these.
And they talk about Reach even back in
Halo
1.
But it's like, but they did it with so little that
Yeah.
it was like, but it was that mystique that like they don't make it a big deal. They just in side conversation and different things like that. That I know something bigger's out there. You're not showing me that. And back then, being a dumb fucking kid, like, oh, I don't know, this is the hard, this is the best technology out there, blah blah blah, They didn't. It was nothing. Realistically, it was nothing. Like, the Xbox was powerful. It was the most powerful console at that time, I believe.
I think so.
But it couldn't really do much. I mean, Christ, look at Morrowind, the field of vision or the fog, that you could barely see because it couldn't. You couldn't really power that.
They did great with the technological limitations.
Yes.
And to your point about mystique, there's a line I've heard somewhere about world building and storytelling, and I think it's been attributed to J.R.R. Tolkien's work in the Middle Earth sort of legendarium, about how anytime you answer a question, you need to ask 2 or 3 more, because if you know everything there is to know about the world, it's not that interesting.
Right.
But when you feel that, like, when you feel the pit of your stomach drop out when you hear someone talking about, like, stuff that happened in the past, and you're like, oh my god, there's centuries of history behind these, like, big rings floating in space, and we're just seeing it for the first time, and, like, we're the first people to lay eyes on it in hundreds of years.
Right. I mean, even like you're saying, that the mission right after the opening mission you play, you drop onto the Halo ring in CE, like, and you're going through there, you're like, I could tell this is something like, this is what I'm on is so modern but so old at the same time.
Right. It's huge and it's empty.
Right. You're like, nobody is here. What the fuck is going on? Like, it's off. Like, but it's that mystique that, like, and I think that's what the big thing with soured people with Halo, at least me personally, with its narrative moving forward, and I think what has made Infinite so much more appealing from my end of somebody who still, like, when I fucking beat Halo 3 last summer, again, watered up a little bit when you see the, you have what's his name saying to the Arbiter at the end, like, I can't believe he, died. I can't believe he didn't make it. And the Arbiter said, "Were it so easy." And you see, 117 on there scratched in, and you're like, holy fuck. Like, it showed so little, but told so much more.
Right.
But,
and then Cortana's like, the Flood, the brutes, you did it.
You did it.
Like you always do. And then she's like, it's finished. And he's like, it's finished. And you know what I mean? And he puts his assault rifle back up in the wall.
Right.
She's like, well, I'm going to make a beacon. It'll be years before anybody finds us. What are you going to do? And he just says, wake me when you need me. And gets in a cryo chamber. And you're like, wow.
Holy shit.
And then another part to
let
build on
Let me just finish with this thread before I forget it, more or less. But the thing that I think that really soured me with Halo moving into 4, because I thought ODST did exactly what they need to do with. They told us cool, like, almost noir-esque, like,
it was
detective.
Absolutely a noir story.
Yeah, it was very detective. It was very, like, mystery-based.
Down to the instrumentation and the saxophone.
Yeah, literally. But it was very. You gave me more of what I already loved.
Right.
The mechanics, everything. You gave me more of what I love, and I'm good with that. And it built into the original trilogy story. It was great. It's actually one of my top 3 Halo experiences, I think, personally, maybe even up there top. But the thing with 4 was that as we're entering, I still think it's the most beautiful, graphically, Xbox 360 game. Period.
Well, sure, yeah.
What they were able to pull off on that system late gen with that technology and not just canning it for a year. And,
it almost felt like it should have been an Xbox One game.
Right. It was very much what they were able to do with that technology was great. And that shows you the power.
It should have been an Xbox One
and that
game.
shows you the power of, what devs can get out of technology after in-house, especially with being a first-party studio with Microsoft, what they can get out of working solely on that technology for X amount of years. But what they were, at the same time, it treaded away from that mystique. Halo was based in military. It was based in, you felt, a military vibe, but it was always a sci-fi story. It started going, but it had military roots to it. It started going more realistic. It moved from that mystique to, well, no, here it is. Like, here's all these, you see all the troops at the beginning of Halo 4. Here's all that, we could show you all this now. And it didn't make as much of an impact.
Right.
Like, there wasn't this build-up, there wasn't this suspense, there wasn't this mystery, there wasn't this investment that you had to have in the story because, here it is.
It was more right to Master Chief, right? You're this one guy, and you're saving the universe 3 times over. And in Halo 4, they're showing you everything else, and you're like, wow, am I so powerful that... Or am I not that powerful, right?
Yeah. Now it's like, well, there's, like, so many of me.
Yeah.
And it's good, like, I like that they wanted to, like, hey, let's flesh this character out, because, John 117's character is very much, it's a very interesting character. It's a character that, like...
They did it right.
It was a mystique, like, every time that he takes the helmet off, you just don't see his fucking face, and you're like, God damn it! I especially love the video where somebody clips out and watches Halo 1 when he takes it off, but he just takes off the helmet and there's another helmet underneath. Like, you're just like, God damn it! Like, and even spoilers for 4, at the end they show his eyes, which, that kind of even plays into it. It's like, Chief was always a superhero.
Right.
He was, and they took that away, and I like that you're like, okay, I want to show the human elements, and we want to build this narrative, but at the same time, it's built on mystique, and nothing's more mystique than somebody who's a superhuman, and is a very much like, this is a badass motherfucker.
He wasn't even originally conceived to be human, I don't think.
No,
if you watch the early demo trailers where, like, I think it was at, like, Macworld or something, back when Halo was going to be an Apple product.
Right.
He had, like, a digitized voice.
Yeah.
And in Halo 1, you can tell he's not really meant to be a character unto himself. He kind of replies with gruff one-liners, and he's a very stoic, quiet guy.
Yes.
He's meant to be a suit for the player to step into.
Right.
He is the... How do I want to put it? He's the vessel for the character that gets you from point A to point B, that you are basically, he's just a suit.
Right?
Yeah.
And if he says anything, he should be saying what you're already thinking.
Right.
Very much so.
And he's kind of like an onion. Every single game kind of peels back a layer to something a little different that you weren't expecting.
Right.
But to build on this talk we're having, we're going to stay kind of in the same thread. I just kind of want to ask you guys your opinion. Halo 4, I never beat it on anything other than Legendary, so bear with me here if I ask this question. And we can break this off and put it into like a uncut, episode or whatever we're going to do here. We're just flying by the seat of our pants here.
This is very much, this is why I wanted to make this first episode. There's no time cap on this one.
Yeah, I mean, we're just talking.
Spewing because this is such an episode... subject matter.
There's so much to talk about.
This is very much at the forefront and the foundation of our gaming history.
Absolutely.
So, more episodes are probably not going to go this deep or this long.
Well, sure, right.
But anyways, go ahead.
But when you're talking about 4 games over 10 years or 15
and especially
years,
in a package
of
MCC, it's 4 games you're getting.
Right.
Actually, technically, it's going to be 6 soon.
Yeah. So, but the unforeseen. I never beat Halo 4 on anything other than Legendary, so I don't know if the scene with Cortana happens on lower difficulties or not. Whenever you blow up Didact and Cortana, like, kind of saves you.
Yeah,
and
it does.
It happens on other things.
The only thing that doesn't show in other ones is the Legendary ending is whenever he goes...
Is he on the ship talking to...
yeah, all of that's there. It's at the end whenever he goes and takes his armor off and zooms in on his eyes. That's the Legendary. I'm almost positive that's the only thing. If you beat that on normal, hard, whatever, or heroic, you don't see that. It's Legendary that it goes and it shows his eyes.
For as much as you hit on Halo 4 for kind of making you feel like you're not as powerful as you are, I kind of want to counter because I agree with you. There are times in Halo 4 where you're like, okay, I'm Chief, but these Forerunners are pretty badass, and I'm in trouble, basically, right?
Yeah.
Well, in Halo 4, the ending with Cortana and, like, that touching scene, which I want to get into, I want to just go off onto a little bit more into the story and we'll talk about how unforeseen the love relationship between those two were built. Yeah. Because in Halo 1, the first kind of snarky thing that she says is, your architecture is pretty similar to the fillers, and he's like, don't get any ideas.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So like they just start off like they're getting along so well,
right.
And as the games progress, you can obviously tell Cortana's infatuated with Chief because no matter what happens, Chief's always pulling through. Whatever it is, Chief always makes it happen. Right?
You tend to put your trust in someone
right.
like that. Yeah.
And then Chief is trusting with Cortana in the same way because Cortana has done things with the computers and stuff that he would have never been able to do. And guess what? Chief wouldn't have been able to achieve all these things without having Cortana there to do some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But with Halo 4, the ending, Cortana's like, Cortana, they have that touching scene that still makes me cry to this day. And then in Halo Infinite, when you hear her voice at the end and she's like, I knew I picked you for a reason.
Right.
Like, that made me cry because it's just like, there's so much in so many years of history, but then he's walking on that ship in the Legendary ending and everyone stops.
Right, yeah.
And they're like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
That's Master Chief.
Right, yeah.
And everyone stops. And it's at that moment where 343 is kind of... They're not killing off Chief because Halo 5, they went a totally different direction, which was their creative freedoms. But in Halo 4, you kind of felt like, oh my god, like, is this like the end of Chief being this character?
Right.
So, I mean, opening it back up to you guys, with Chief, you can touch on what I talked about with the Halo 4 ending and just the arc from 1 to 4,
Yeah.
and also about the Cortana thing, because I think that it was kind of insidious how it happened, because it was just something that wasn't in your face, because there's an AI chip in your head talking to you, and there's you. How can these two characters kind of, fall in love and have this little bit of a love interest thing going on? So it was definitely like unseen for most people, but I mean, you could tell, but it wasn't something that was in your face. Like, there's other games that come to mind where there's obvious love interest, like, Dom and Maria in Gears of War, which we'll talk about on the next episode.
That'll be the next episode.
But yeah, I mean, go ahead. What you think about that?
I mean, I think in terms of Halo 1, where they didn't have their backstory of like how Chief was trained to be a Spartan and how Cortana picked him to be her partner, like, you didn't know any of that going into Halo 1.
Like I said, because it's just like Keyes is just like, all right, Cortana, go with the Master Chief. He's got to keep you safe. And she just kind of jokes about taking him over, right? So, like, at that time, there's not a whole lot of backstory about what's going on.
But you immediately get the idea that they have some rapport. At
least,
even if they didn't have history before that, they immediately establish rapport between these two characters.
Yeah, and like sense of humor between the two of them.
And throughout the rest of the game, they rely on each other. Like, Cortana can't really accomplish much on her own, but she has incredible intelligence capabilities of like taking the larger situation at hand and distilling it down to Chief so that he can take action. And I think that's really where their relationship springs from. It's like when you have this voice in your head, this presence that's always with you, and you rely on them in a practical way, like, what else can you do? Like, they're just a fixture in your life. I think that's one aspect of the characterization of Chief that works, even if he's not a well fleshed out character. Like, at least you understand him in the context of his relationship to Cortana, whereas she has more personality. She's more quippy, snarky. Like, she's a fun AI companion.
Yeah, and in Halo 4, Master Chief, up until this point, into the end of Halo 4, he's really, he's sitting on the ship, talking to the commander, and the commander says, it's kind of weird for you to call me that. Because, Master Chief doesn't rank that high in the military, but he's this super soldier that just keeps saving everybody.
He is the most powerful man in the military.
Basically,
without saying.
But he still has to follow commands, right? And, Chief goes on the tangent of,
and that even kind of goes back to the Infinite trailer that we just saw a couple weeks ago.
Where the guy gets so excited when Chief powers up.
And instantly Chief is like, status report.
Yeah.
Where, a status report.
There's not a whole lot of humanity with Chief. Right. But in Halo 4, you can see it with his interaction with Cortana, when he's like, okay, well, how do we get out of here?
That bleed a little
and
bit.
She's like, we're not going home, John. I only saved enough to save you. And he's like, no, that's not how this works. We go together. Yeah. And you kind of see this thing where you finally see a human side of Chief. And then all the things with Cortana goes, and he gets rescued, and he's on the ship talking to the commander. And he's like, our duty as soldiers is to protect humanity. And then the commander says, well, you say that like we're not the same thing. Like, we're not all humans, you know what I mean? And I think that Chief in Halo 5, they finally kind of show a human side when he's just chasing Cortana all over the universe, right?
Right, yeah.
But, I mean, Travis, what is your take on all that?
I mean, I think I agree. Like, it's nice to see Chief end up having these multi-threads and having more than just I'm here to save the world, and I'm saving this, and blah, blah, blah. Like, a robot. And
has that raspy voice, and just like, I'm Master Chief.
Yeah. And, like, because that does, at the same time, that does get old.
I need a weapon.
Right, yeah. I need a weapon. Like, it does get, okay,
right this
broken
way.
record, broken record. I get that. But and that's maybe just me being I'm more of that person who less sometimes is more. Like, and I said that before, but like sometimes my stories I like being told. Sometimes you don't need to say anything.
Right.
Sometimes you don't need. That's why I like you said, even with that, even with what you were saying with the end of Halo 4, was so little. He still told so much. Like, you still saw those things that. And I personally, I really liked Halo 4's story.
Right, I did too.
And I think a lot of people, that was the one saving grace of Halo 4, that the story was fucking good.
Absolutely.
In Halo 5, I think a lot of people would like it more if they didn't taint it with going a whole different direction than what was. I mean, the marketing just was completely wrong. It was who's hunting who and who's in the right, who's in the wrong, and this and that. And this is Master Chief's story, and you have to uncover the truth about Master Chief. And we'll get into that in a Halo 5
Yeah, that
podcast.
completely... By the way, that's the only campaign of Halo I've never played.
Right.
It completely turned me off
to
the experience.
And I went in at such a low... Because when I was like you, with Halo 5, once it dropped, I only really played multiplayer. I played like one mission of 5, or at the beginning of 5. But outside of that, like, I was like, I'm playing just multiplayer, fuck it. Like, but going back and having such low expectations, 5's campaign really, I was like, this isn't bad. Like,
right.
If this is how you would have presented it at the beginning, I think a lot more people would have liked it. But it also wasn't as much of a strong story as well. Like, the story of what they were telling didn't have as much emotional impact that was told. But I think overall, like me, just personally, and that just might be my thing, that sometimes I like whenever people tell me less with more, or more straightforward stuff at times. But at the same time, I gotta appreciate, like you're saying, in 4, you see this human element of Chief that just bleeds in, because he is, from almost birth, he was chosen because he fit these criteria, and he had these almost killer instincts.
Yeah.
But he was less human than everyone else. All these kids who were born into the Spartan program, but at the same time was very... You could see, like, he is a human. He doesn't want to believe it, but he is a human.
Like in Halo 3 at the end, like I said, with him, racking the assault rifle and going into the cryo chamber, he kind of knew Cortana was going to be there at the end. So there wasn't much humanity that came out of Chief at that point in time. He's just your super soldier, run of the mill. He doesn't really have any connections. Yeah. Then in Halo 4, he finally realizes, I'm going to lose Cortana.
But even for, and I think the big thing with Chief was, even for a man, and this is why I think they tried telling the story in 5 with him and Locke would take off his helmet, and that was something Chief never did. Like,
right.
They were very much oil and water. They didn't mesh well.
Yeah.
If you had a face with Chief, that'd be different. But even for somebody without a face, Chief is so you could still tell.
He expresses so much.
He's expressing with so much, with just so little. You could tell, like, with how the writing is around everybody else and how their dialogue is, and how he feeds off of that with his maybe one-line expressions or dialogue.
His dialogue basically shows his personality.
Sometimes you could tell, like you were saying at the end of 4, that's not how this is.
Yeah,
like, he's befuddled, and like, you get so much out of that because of the people around him, but he does so much with just by himself.
Yeah.
It's like, holy
you can tell when Chief's panicked because there's a lot more dialogue between him and Cortana.
Yeah.
You can tell when he's not upset at all because he hits his quippy one-liners. He doesn't really care.
Right.
You can tell when
he's
Chief's
stoic,
feelings.
There's something.
You can tell Chief's feelings all just based on dialogue.
Right.
Where if you go to another series that we're going to cover, like Gears of War with Marcus and Dom, they all have facial expressions.
Right.
Their stories are a lot more like...
They're animated.
There's a lot more stuff going on there, and we'll cover that in length. And this is a situation where I think you could cover each Halo game. We could do an hour for each Halo game, or more for each Halo game, and just uncover all this stuff. Yeah. It's a lot to ask 3 guys who've put as much time into Halo to break it down in the time format that we've tried to do.
Right.
And, as a person, I can tell... We didn't really want to ramble, but
we rambled.
But it's
and all podcasts
it's
won't
hard.
Be like this.
It's hard.
But this is very much a series that we're very passionate about.
Absolutely.
I mean, all of us have a passion for this series that we want to see do well, and I think that's why I'm so excited for Infinite, because that's pulling on a lot of narrative threads alone that I feel, and a lot of aesthetic choices that they're going with, like the black Under Armour suit, like the things that give me those vibes to that time that I was like, God damn! Like, I look back and I'm like, this story's so impactful.
Yeah.
This time playing this game is so impactful, and it's pulling on those heartstrings. But alone, from a narrative standpoint, what they're giving with Infinite does give me those vibes of Mystique. Like, what we're not shown, like, leading into Halo 4, we're not shown every single particle of the ship torn apart, and all the armies, and this and that, and all the military, and this. Like, you don't see that. What you're shown in 4, like, okay, last year's E3 trailer, where we're like, is this Halo? Is this it? Nah, I don't know. Oh, fuck, those are Marines. This is Halo. Holy shit, that's Master Chief. Like, what they were showing, it was a lot, but it wasn't, it was almost like a minimalistic take on it.
Absolutely.
Like, it was...
And that's been the key for all their games.
Right.
Every time they've ever released a game,
every
it's
time
been
that
minimal.
they've released...
A good Halo.
A good Halo. Me personally,
You
at
can
least,
say it. You can say it.
a good Halo, they've shown more with less. And granted, technology at the time and yada yada. But my point being, they're doing that with Infinite, and people are fucking loving it. They're like, most people, 99% people, but especially traditional Halo fans, from the vibe they're getting, like, yes, holy shit, people are listening to us.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what you see with, like, okay, they start out, you look around the ship when they start the E3 trailer, a couple weeks ago, and you're seeing details because it's beautiful 4K that they're putting out, 4K 60 that they're putting out. There's fucking ray tracing in this video. Like, from a visual element of the fidelity, it's great. But the artistic choices that they're choosing, the art style that they're choosing, it's still this... There's a lot of matte colors. There's a lot of things that, like, you don't need to show the detail, the gritty, like, Call of Duty, like, that's not what Halo is.
Right.
Halo's a sci-fi story. Halo is a sci-fi, has some military roots.
And there's some realisticness, but it's minuscule.
But
yeah.
you're talking
It's
about...
all in service of the space opera.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like,
That's
when the Covenant comes to Earth in Halo 2, right, that's about as closest to realism as you can get.
Right.
But they're in places called, like, New Mombasa, because it's futuristic, so they're in places that don't exist.
Right.
Now, they're on Earth, but it's still sci-fi because they put it in these places that just don't really exist.
Yeah.
I mean, you might be able to relate them, like New Mombasa. I would guess that'd be somewhere in Africa.
Right.
But, like, it's not...
It's like a hyper-dense...
It's not Johannesburg, South Africa. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
yeah.
So, but, just to kind of work towards putting a bow on this, as hard as it is, because I'm having so much fun talking about this. And I think Travis and Adam can kind of feel the same way. That, I mean, we could just... this podcast could go for 5 more hours. Yeah. And I don't think any of us would get tired of it. No. But, just to kind of continue on, the next kind of thing we had on the docket was to talk about what we thought what game Infinite was gonna take after. Mm-hmm. And based on what we saw from E3 and based on what I've seen from 343 thus far, I think they're gonna find a way to put their own spin on the entire universe, which they already have with Halo 4 and Halo 5. So I don't think they're gonna go back towards it's not gonna be like Halo 3 cloned or Halo 2 cloned.
No, I don't think, but I think they're gonna respect that. Not respect, but they're gonna how do I want to say this? They're gonna bring those past ties and at least make it known that we haven't forgot about this.
Well, right. I'm
not like Halo 4 and Halo 5 where it's like, okay, yeah, like, we know in Halo 1 and Halo 2 and Halo 3, yeah, the Chief upgraded his armor. The fuck is this guy wearing now?
Yeah.
Like, not that necessarily matters, because, like I said, story was still good.
Right.
Story was great. But the vibe that it gave, like, what you're seeing, it wasn't believable necessarily, because then at the same time, yeah, Chief's asleep or whatever, and, the secret ending in 3, what they gave, like, oh, you're coming up on that Forerunner ship that, you wake up to on 4. Well, then how did Chief get his armor? It's just not, there's no connection where you feel very disconnected right from the get-go from 3 to 4.
Yeah.
And you very much can tell 4 is 343, 3 is Bungie. Like, there's no mistaking it. They're very different games.
I feel like they might have actually did that to a fault, if that's what you're getting at.
Yes. No, that's what I'm saying.
What's the use? I get you want your creative freedoms, but going back to your melee combat with competitive, if it ain't broke... But you
have a decade worth of...
If it ain't broke, why fix it?
Right.
There's no need to fix it.
But you have a decade's worth... Right. And you have a decade's worth of, content and, built up on this game that it feels like it's not even...
necessary. Like, you didn't even have to play the older games.
No, you did not have to play the older games.
Which is a shame.
Which is crazy to think. Like, you could have played that and been like, oh, I'm just taking over this guy who was lost in space and now he found this mysterious thing. Like, you didn't need... It was very much a chop.
Yeah.
Here you go. Like, you take, at the time now, right now, 5 games. After 3, chop. You take these 2. There's these 3. If you want to play this, cool. You don't need to. Our games are this. Where now, Infinite very much feels like, from what I'm seeing, okay, this is Halo.
Yeah.
Like, this is like, I'm like, holy shit, like...
You get chills
like,
when you're
when I think
seeing
about that, like, when it finally pans out, like, that first trailer they released, and it fucking pans over the hill, and it pans the Chief holding that helmet, and I'm like, this is Halo.
Yeah.
We're on a Halo ring again. We are balls deep in the Halo story with, I'm getting vibes of, who the hell knows, maybe the Flood survived. Like, maybe something like the traditional Halo story of, personally, I just don't care about the Forerunners.
Right, neither do I.
I think they'll obviously still be touched in Infinite, because that is such a deep-rooted thing, but it's one of those things that they were talked about for so long, this Forerunner technology and the Forerunners themselves, that it was that mystique that, like, we probably will never see them because it's an ancient technology, and this and that, like, yeah, we may never see it, but they're there. Mm-hmm. We know about them, but it's like, I don't know, maybe one day or whatever, but now we see them, and it's like, nobody really wanted that, and it's too far removed from the past.
Nothing that they could have actually shown the Forerunners or the Prometheans being could be as good as we imagined.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, because they talked it up so much.
Better to not even show. Just show
Once
us...
again, more with less.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, like, I don't know. I think their visual design is a little too noisy. And in general,
in Halo 5, that was part of the problem with playing it competitively. Their maps are so vivid and beautiful, it's like hard to pick out the enemies sometimes.
Light source, you can't tell.
Gloss! No matte, glossy!
Yeah.
Everything's shiny!
Yeah.
Like, if you look at, do you remember the underground section near the beginning of the Warthog drive
from
in
3?
the second mission of Halo 1?
Yes.
When you first go underground, you have to activate the light.
Yeah, and it's all dark and like...
They ruined the art direction of that area because they lit the whole thing up. It was supposed to be this very dark... You can't see the walls even. But
you shouldn't have been able to, because guess what? Then your enemies are coming out of these shadows, and your first thought, which is like pays homage, like my thought of it, even though this game predates Gears of War, when you're playing Gears of War, you're thinking like, holy fuck, how many people do I have to fight in this part?
Yeah.
Every time you saw a trailer for Gears, it's like there's this unsurmountable amount of enemies that you will never be able to beat. Where if they utilize that in Halo, like you said, there'd be grunts and elites coming out of the darkness, and you're like, holy shit, how many people do I have to fight here?
Yeah.
But like as you were saying,
the Prometheans and their visual design is noisy. They're just not that interesting.
Yeah.
And, like, I would rather go back to
And I know you guys didn't play 5, but, like, the Warden to me that you kept facing, like, I hope to be honest, I hope you guys do go play 5. Like, if you have
I have it bought.
Right.
So I
if
bought
you have
it.
a son, now that it's, Game Pass has come to PC, and eventually 5 is going to come to PC in some form, or, Adam, you get, back on, since you're going to be doing a lot of, our coverage in the podcast with Game Pass on PC, probably primarily, at least starting out, I think 5 is worth going and playing through, and I'm sure I'll get, destroyed on the internet for saying that, but take away the marketing, take away everything, just take it for what it is, a 6 to 8 hour, if you got a Sunday and you don't have anything to do, or a weekend, or, whatever, and you just feel like running through on easy, just to get the story, or hell, even if you look up on YouTube and watch the
hour-long cinematic, which is what I did.
Exactly, and you find out what the story is, it's a decent story. The ending is kind of like, like, it is what it is, but, like, what the everyone surrounding Cortana just wasn't that interesting, and like you said, everything's just noisy. It's like, there's too much, like, maybe I'm an old fogey at 26 now, but, like, I'm like, why is everything so bright?
I thought there were too many characters.
Why are there
4 and 5?
Why are there so many light sources when they're on, like, the moon and there's no light? Like, why are there so many light sources? I don't get that. Like, how, like, the aesthetic, like, why are they in space and there's no sun? Why are there so many light sources? Why is light reflecting? It's not ray tracing. Like, ray tracing where it's, like, legitimate lighting. Like,
my thing about it is, like, for me, if they can just, like, they're doing all the right things. We covered this.
Yeah.
If they want to really push the Forerunner battle with Chief versus the Forerunners trying to find Cortana. Okay. I can buy it, but you got to bring, like, the Arbiter back. Like, Chief has to, like, reach out to the Arbiter.
Spoiler alert, he was in 5.
Yeah.
He was a very big emphasis in 5 at one point.
But you got to bring Arbiter, Arby. You got to have him, like, helping Chief find Cortana.
Yeah.
Because Arbiter, you know, him and Chief, well, they weren't exactly friends, per se. They were certainly allies.
They both wanted what's best for their races.
In the galaxy.
And
they were reasonable enough. And they're reasonable enough not to be like, humans should trump the Covenant, or the Covenant should trump... It was like, we could both survive.
We both realized we could live within balance.
Yeah.
We may not like each other, but we both can live in balance.
They had 2 common enemies. Like,
right.
The Arbiter realized that the
prophets were lying.
Right. And obviously the Gravemind.
And the Brutes were like,
and that was
going to pull the quick one on...
That was an interesting conflict. It was like... You had it set up where it was, okay...
It was a political conflict that was built in religion that, like, are 2 things you probably should never talk about with people, but it told such an interesting story of, okay, this is a different setting that we're in that, like, we've never seen this kind of, like, in the space opera of, you know... Yeah, with Star Wars you saw, you know... You saw politics with it, but it was mostly a very... good guy versus bad guy. I fight you now. Like, it's Star Wars was awesome, don't get me wrong, but, like, Halo was touching on some deep-seated, like, religious things and different things like that, like, you know, they called Chief the demon. They called him Demon. They never called him Chief. They never called him... They said demon. Like, because that's what they viewed, like, it was a religious thing because of the prophets, and, you know...
And the indoctrination of the whole Covenant, and, like, they're kind of, like, imperialist... domination of every member race.
Yeah.
Their whole mission was a lie. And they were but somehow they were able to delude all of these different races into pursuing goals that were ultimately self-destructive. And by the time the truth gets out, it's like, okay, the prophets know that the rings are just going to destroy everybody. Mm-hmm. But they can't undermine their own authority by admitting that wrong.
Yeah, the ship had sailed.
Right.
They pretty much just had to go down with it because they knew.
Yeah.
Like, what's the other option? We admit, guys, we fucked up. They're still gonna die.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's the off chance that we're wrong, or that, you know, the rings really aren't for that?
And it was a conflict that arose organically out of the very simple setup that began in Halo 1. You had, like, the first couple missions until the Flood are introduced. It's a very simple one-on-one conflict. It's this human race versus these aliens, and we don't know, like, what the aliens really want or why they're here. We learn that over time, and then you introduce this third character, the Flood, which I would love to see come back in future titles. Oh my god, yeah. Because they played this important role. Interesting. And then with the Flood as a common enemy, some, you know, in Halo 2 you saw the Covenant and some humans working together, but also the Covenant kind of self-destructing.
Yeah.
And that continued in through Halo 3. The Brutes took over the position as, like, the main guard.
Yeah.
Kind of like the bread and butter units. But the elites broke off into their own. I don't really know what the deal was with the Covenant in Halo 4. Were they, like... were they, like, a splinter faction that were still faithful to the prophets?
No, they kind of went off and did their...
They just kind of, like... They were, like, just kind of pulled a Switzerland.
With themselves. Like,
yeah, they just pulled a Switzerland and were just like...
Yeah.
Yeah, it really, because in 5 4 they don't really touch on it at all. Like, they are...
Arby's, like, not really
At the beginning, there's Covenant that do, like, appear, and they kind of touch on that, but then it's...
Aren't they serving the Didact in 4?
Yeah.
There's a few, like, religious, like... Some of that religious bullshit.
They are very, very much the backseat.
Yeah.
It is very, like, they're scattered.
Yeah.
Whereas...
Like, some of those clans that just, like, were left over on these places that, like...
I guess it makes sense. Like, they were in 5 to worshipping the Forerunners.
Yeah.
Where in 5, you go and actually find the Arbiter, and you see the Covenant, or, you know, what these Covenant are, or how they want to be referred to within all of this. You see them actually living as they probably do in a normal society within themselves, and they are religious, but they aren't these crazy bastards that you see in, you know...
2 and...
That you kind of can see... They're not radical.
They're not crusaders.
Right. They're not this radical crusaders that you see, like, almost parallel to, like, something like ISIS or, you know, the Taliban or something like that you see in the original trilogy, where now they're, you know, what most people would look at as, traditional Islamic or Muslim, faith of, oh, they're just kind of doing their own thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's very much, you could see parallels with that a little bit, or at least, it's, what is viewed in our society, I guess, if you want to say, or you get what I'm saying. So let's kind of put a bow on this episode, or at least let's kind of, we'll head into the end here, the finish line.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Halo is something that we might cover like one game at a time in future, depending on how this one goes.
Definitely, I want to do, like I said, I want to do 1 on 5. We're going to do that eventually.
Sure, and then we could even do 1 on Halo 1, 1 on Halo 2, 1 on Halo 3, you know what I mean? And there's so much content there.
Right, and the Game Pass, being the first episode, and being under, the bonus accessory kind of network, if you want to call it, or IP entity, whatever you want to call it. We're going to have, the plan is to eventually have different shows where we touch on different, I want to do a Nintendo show, I want to do a PlayStation show, I want to do a PC show, I want to do, deep dives, kind of like what we did today, but this gives you kind of an overall view of what we think we're going to talk about. But with Game Pass, we can do that, because technically these games are all on there. They're in this one package, but from an overview of this, we're going to go into our last segment called, just because I couldn't fucking think of the last part of it, Cash It, Pass It, or Ass It. So, stick with me. Got 3 categories of what I want you to pick with this game. Cash it. You go out, you spend your hard-earned money, you go pay the $30 for MCC, the disc, or the download, or whatever, boom, you fucking own it forever. Pass it, where you use Game Pass, it's included in your $10 a month, or, if you luck out on Black Friday, you get a $60 for a year discount or whatever like that. You have it on your, it's included with your service, you download it. After, you cancel your service, okay, I don't have it, okay, whatever. But it's worth, buying it then. Or Ass It. Fuck this game. Don't buy it. Don't spend your money on this. What do you guys think? Adam, I'm going to start with you. What do you think? Cash it, pass it, Ass It?
I think MCC is probably something you want to either cash or pass.
You definitely think you should have this installed on your console?
You should have MCC.
If you own an Xbox One, you should have this installed on your console.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's going to be down to you to decide. I don't want to split the hair over. It's definitely worth buying retail
owning outright
versus pass.
Almost like with a movie. Oh, I want to buy this movie. Oh, you know what? Or should you buy this movie? Should you rent it, or should you just pass on it? Yeah. Like that type of deal, I guess, if you want to look at it.
Okay. I gotta punt it over to Mike.
Punting it.
I can split the hair.
You punted it. You punted it.
Gut feeling. Gut.
What do you say?
I think pass.
Pass it?
I think it's something you should Game Pass.
Okay, so if you have Game Pass, it's definitely worth picking up if you have Game Pass.
Yeah.
Like, if you are subscribed to the service and say you have it for a year, it's definitely worth having installed on your Xbox as one of your Game Pass games. Okay, cool. Mike, what do you think?
This one is tricky. If you asked me before the big update, obviously I'm saying Ass It.
Even with the campaigns.
That's where I start to get into trouble, because I feel like the campaigns... something we didn't talk about during this whole episode, which is like a miracle. If you sit down and try to play through Legendary by yourself or with a companion, you're looking at like at least an hour per mission, because you're going to die times and things like that are going to happen. So you're talking about 1 hour per mission, and there are so many missions in these 4 games that you're getting so much content. For me, for $30, it's a buy. I mean, you just got to cash it, because it's just, there's so much there, and I can understand the sentiment of wanting to pass it. But regardless of whether you pass it or cash it, it should be on your hard drive. It's a big-ass game, so I can understand if you pass it, deleting it. To me, it's a cash. There's so much campaign. There's so much multiplayer to offer. In the social realm, too, which, by the way, when I get onto social and play in social, I'm by far normally one of the best players in the game, because I'm a competitive player. So there's plenty of, like, newer player base out there that are out there in social games that are welcoming.
You find games.
Yeah.
Like, now that it's on Game Pass, you find games.
To me, it's a cash. I'm kind of biased. This one's kind of tough for me.
Right.
But I'm saying this is a cash. Travis, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going with cash it. Right now, if you're buying an Xbox One, you're committed to the Xbox brand. I love video games like all of you guys. It's my favorite it's my favorite entertainment outlet or medium. Like, that's what I like doing. I'll watch movies. I'm not a TV binger. If I'm watching TV, I'd rather play a video game. Like, so I own all the consoles right now. But I started this generation with Xbox because I loved Xbox, but they had no games. Went to PS4 because they had a ton of games and a ton of great games, because that also fit my playstyle. But nothing replaces Halo. Halo made me come back to an Xbox because they were getting all this. Plus, with Game Pass, it's inspired us to make this kind of at least on my end, the top priority of a podcast I want to get out there, because this value that you have is ridiculous for $10 a month. Like, and you have access to over 100 games, and all Xbox One exclusives drop on there day one. Like, that's a no-brainer. For $120 a month, you're spending two AAA sized games you're buying. That's crazy. Anyways, though, that being said, like, this game, Xbox right now, if you own an Xbox One or an Xbox One S, whatever you have, you're buying it because you're committed to an Xbox brand, and you probably have Game Pass. Like, you're committed to that brand because Xbox has always admitted, like, Phil Spencer has always come out and said, hey, we've lost this generation. It's done. Like, let's build the foundation. Let's scrap everything. Let's build the foundation moving into the next generation. That's why you see with Game Pass. That's why you see with Xbox One X being the most powerful console. Like, you're owning an Xbox because you love Xbox right now. It's not like PS4 or even Switch where it's like, I'm owning this because there's a lot of great games out there. I just want a game, and whatever has the best games on there, I want to get this. If you have an Xbox One, it's because you love Xbox. Like, that's just what it is, because there's not a lot of exclusives. That being said, this is a cash-in. If you have an Xbox One, you have to own this game, because it's the best exclusive, personally, that I think they have this generation. From just a value standpoint.
And it's from the older generation.
It's the improvements they've made to it. The campaigns alone are fucking awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the update to 60 frames and 1080p on Halo 3. It's caused us issues competitively with Ghost Melees, Bloodshots on LAN. It's caused some issues making the switch.
Right.
But absolutely, this is a cash.
To me, if you own an Xbox One, this is just a must-have, because, I mean, there are tons.
But this isn't a buy an Xbox One to have.
No, I probably wouldn't buy an Xbox One to have unless you're a psychopath like me who wanted to play fucking Halo again, and couldn't wait for it to come out on PC. Granted, I wanted to get a 4K Blu-ray player, and it was a good deal. But I've been back in the Xbox realm now for, year and a half now. But it is a must. If you ask me, it is a must-have, because the value alone for $30, you're getting, I mean, just on the campaigns alone, from going back and playing different things, plus a little bit of multiplayer. Last summer, I put like 80 hours into it.
Yeah.
For one game, for $30 fucking.
Yeah, that's a lot of playtime.
I might have to amend my decision, because the longer I've had to think about it, the more I'm coming around to cashing it. Just from a value standpoint, MCC is a game you should have because you're gonna revisit it year after year.
It doesn't get old. There's content. It's
a game that, like, if you're a 35-year-old man that has Xbox because you always had Xbox, and a couple of your buddies still have Xbox that live across the country, and then you have a son who's 7 years old, and you want to do something with your son, Gears of War is a little tough for a 7-year-old. Maybe you want to go to Halo and play couch co-op with your son. Whenever you have if you're spending time with your son and your son loves the game, tell him to put down Minecraft, tell him to put Fortnite down, and hand him a controller and play through Halo with him. Yeah. And guess what? Halo 1, you hit the select button, you have the updated graphics. So if your kid can't get behind the graphics that Halo 1 had to offer, Halo 1 and Halo 2 are so blocky now? Yeah, they're updated. So you can enjoy that with your son. I mean, that's an example.
Lame game, pog.
Yeah, like.
And I came into this podcast saying that Halo's story has aged like fine wine.
It has.
And I think it's going to continue to age well.
There are some, now, playing it recently, there are some things that you're like, I'm like, I remember that being a little bit deeper, but the overall story of it, man, like, it's just so, it's so emotional. We didn't even talk about the music, the soundtrack, the score of this game with Marty, man.
There's too much to cover.
And that's one of my last little sidetrack here. But one of the things I think they're doing so well with Infinite is they got such a good sound and music and score director. All their music directors have experience on these huge cinematic games. Uncharted, Last of Us. What else were they from? A couple of other like really big cinematic games that they're coming now to Halo. And you could just tell from like when the Marine is trying to start up Chief again, and you hear the different like the like almost like hope. Yeah, there's a little bit of hope, like please don't die. Please don't die. And it builds up, boom. And then it's
and you hear the Halo 3 shield regen.
Yeah.
And then you see the HUD and it looks like Halo 3.
The woodwind come in the background of just like we did it. Like it.
And 343 fucking threw in the classic Bungie. Do you guys remember I Love Bees, the ARG, before Halo 2 or 3 came out? Basically, they had like that whole online campaign.
Yes.
They threw in a little streak of that in the trailer because there were download codes.
Yeah.
In his HUD.
The 5x5s, yeah. There was download codes, and they were all different lengths of Game Pass. So when you activated those codes that came up on his HUD, if you froze it and used one of those codes, you got Game Pass for X amount of time.
So that's them learning more lessons from their predecessors.
Yeah.
But I don't want to stretch this out too long, but I think I might have to...
You going cash?
I might renege and say cash.
He's going cash.
I mean, he's cashed it.
I
cash that check, baby.
This is a game that you should have forever because you're going to be revisiting it year after year, and it doesn't make sense to pay for Game Pass if this is what you're going to do it for.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, maybe keep Game Pass for other reasons, but just for MCC, cash.
Game Pass.
Let me.
You want to own this game.
Let me break this down from a value standpoint. Halo MCC, all the games are combined. Obviously, you're going to want to cache that. Looking forward to a Gears of War type podcast where all the games are separate.
They're all in Game Pass, but they're all separate.
You probably just want to pass most of those games, right? Because they're separate.
Right.
A game
and not that they're expensive to go and buy, but out of just ease.
Yeah. Like ease to just fire it up and just switch.
They're all like 5 gig downloads or whatever, outside of 4.
Yeah.
That's the newest one. But like they're all, relatively small downloads.
Exactly.
Download them real quick.
Exactly. And there's going to be games on here that are going to be passed. Some of them are going to be cash. And I'm sure there's going to be some of them that are going to be ass.
Yeah.
But Halo MCC, to all three of us, and to everybody who owns an Xbox, should be a cash.
It should be a cash.
Unless you are so biased against Halo and you hate it. If you're that type of person, I'm sorry. I don't want to hang out with you at the parties.
Why don't you enjoy good things?
Like, I don't want to hang out with you at the party either.
And to the last question on the script here about a permanent spot on your hard drive, I think I might still have to say it's something I reinstall every once in a while. Like
which is fine.
I have seasons of Halo.
Yeah,
revisiting
you get that itch that only
you've
Halo
always
can
been
scratch.
that way, though.
Yeah.
You've always had your bits where you're really into Halo, and then you've had them where you're like...
It's like a fling that comes back. Like, it's that itch that only one thing can scratch. Yeah. And when you want that, that's the one thing that can scratch it. But after a while, it's like, I want to play something else. And I'm the same way. But that game will always... That's the one game, like... as I said before, I'm mostly a physical media whore still. Yeah. Like, I do... But Game Pass has changed me. Xbox, I am all digital... Besides, I still buy a few, like, if I want to buy a few collector's editions or whatever like that for games. But I'm mostly Game Pass on there. But the one game I do have that's always in my disk drive is MCC. Because that's one game that, like, I want to make sure I owned. Like, all my PS4 games basically are physical, but everything else is, But, with that being said, I think we're going to put a bow on this one. This is a hell of a first episode. We went over 2 hours. So,
check the time, and it's...
what are we working with?
We're running at 2 hours and 23 minutes.
Woo! This one might be broken up into 2 parts. We might 2-part this.
We might have to 2-part because we did a really good job at...
I didn't want to cut any of this because it was very good.
I like the long form.
I do. I love long form, especially when it's something we're passionate
You could probably release it twice. You could probably break it in parts, do multiplayer look, campaign look, because we did kind of chunk that up really well.
We'll probably...
But you could release it as a whole thing,
We'll probably do... I think I'll probably trend towards doing 2 parts, but I think with that, let's put a bow on this. So we all said cash it. So yeah, go buy MCC. If you own an Xbox One, go buy this goddamn game, man.
Yeah.
Next on the docket, another franchise that we love near and dear in the Xbox ecosystem or universe whatever you want to call it, Gears of War. And we're talking Gears of War, the series in general.
The series in general? Yeah. Okay.
It's all on Game Pass.
Cool.
I'm actually just started up. I never beat 4. I started that up last night for the first time in a long time. I was like, I need to play through this because 5 looks fucking great. I'm really excited to touch on 5. I know 4 people were like, it was kind of the same, but it was still good.
Yeah.
But I like where they're heading with 5 from what I know about 4. So I'm excited to play through that. That's what the next episode's going to be.
We need to get together and just couch co-op it.
That would be great. And I think that'd be great for all of us to kind of have, opinions going into it.
Yeah, because me and Adam have recently beat Gears 1 again.
Mm-hmm. And so did I. I went through and did the ultimate version of it.
Yeah, we need to play Gears 2 and 3 again, but
Gears 2, man.
Let's do a brief break here go ahead and we'll edit this part out. Go ahead and do your wrap up. I want to do just a brief looking forward, like you could just put out like a 2-minute.
Oh yeah,
like looking forward to Gears.
Yeah, this will all be edited.
So
all right, we're gonna cut it with that. So Adam, let's start with this. Where can people find you? Social media, Xbox. What's your Xbox Live, Steam, whatever. Where can people find you?
Get me on Twitter at AC_Marshy and tweet me your opinions about Halo, about games in general. I love all kinds of games. Show me the kind of games that you're playing. Tell me what you're doing. Show me the games that you're making if you're developing games.
Yes, show him the games.
I'm way into that as well. I'm kind of a hobbyist developer, so that's a lot of where my perspective comes from. So again, you can get me on Twitter at AC_Marshy.